Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Daily Dizzle for Friday, January 28th, 2011. This is Tommy Dizzlemits here with you as always. We got a lot to bring to you today. We got the weekly wrap-up of the box office, and with no strings attached, sitting on top. We'll have the breakdown on that and the rest of the top 10. We've got some movie news for you as well, including who you can expect also returning for the next James Bond movie. On top of that, we have some TV news, including the Charlie's Angels remake. Oh my god! On top of that, we will also tell you what other networks are looking to cash in on zombies becoming all the rage again due to The Walking Dead. But as we said, we've got the box office report. We've got No Strings Attached was sitting on top for the week. Made over $26 million, so it's already made back $25 million budget. So it's got to be a success already. Still not the epic performance like Avatar, which was in the top spot at the same time last year. Business is already down January about 30% compared to last year, and attendance is about at a 20-year low. But I guess there's some success stories, like a movie that no one expected to make any money, making a little in its first week. Meanwhile, number 2, The Green Hornet, was knocked off of its perch, dropped over 50%. It's apparently holding around the same pattern as Kick-Ass did after its first 2 weeks. It was down to 22 million, just under that for the week, and it is sitting at north of 67 million. So it's making some money. It's starting to perform well around the world. They really don't have anything to worry about in the long run. We have The King's Speech at number 3, which, by the way, a lot of the Oscar movies here, The King's Speech, True Grit, Black Swan, with the Oscar announcements on Tuesday, ended up actually receiving a boost in business, but The King's Speech ended up holding down the number 3 spot for the week with 11.6 million, so it is sitting at north of 60 million at this point. Meanwhile, the other opener from last week, The Dilemma, had a pretty steep fall considering it did not open that well, dropped over 50%, made 11.5 million for the week, so it's sitting at 35 million. It's made half its budget back at this point, so hopefully it can do well around the world and when it comes out on DVD. Otherwise, it might lose a little bit of money. Number 5, we had True Grit, north of 10 million for the week. So it's at $140 million total altogether. So it's within 2 million of Little Fockers, which is further down the top 10, but we'll get to that in a minute. Number 6 was Black Swan, making $8.2 million for the week. It's sitting at over $85 million. So the $100 million mark is within its reach at this point. It might even cross it within the next 2 weeks, so we'll have coverage on that as well. Meanwhile, under that, we also had The Fighter, which ended up getting some nominations as well. Ended up with $5.8 million for the week. It's sitting at $74 million, 3 times its $25 million budget, so they're doing well. As we mentioned, Little Fockers starting to drop off at a quicker rate than True Grit, which it opened against. It is sitting at $5.3 million for the last week, with $142 million in the till altogether. Number 9 was Tron Legacy, also from the holiday movies, with $4.6 million for the week, sitting at $164 million. So even if you're just looking at North American gross, it's within $6 million of hitting its budget. Crazy considering people expected it to be a huge bomb. Rounding out the top 10, another holiday holdover, we had Yogi Bear with $4.5 million. It's sitting at $89 million. Could cross $90 million in the next week. Might hit $100 million, might not. Really depends on how quick it drops off after that. Though a lot of these 3D movies are performing strong because there's no alternatives. There haven't been a lot of new 3D movies other than The Green Hornet, but there's a lot of those coming out in February, so you can expect those to kind of drop off a little bit quicker, despite the fact that they appear to be hanging around a little bit longer. The only other wide release for the week was The Way Back, which ended up doing very, very bad. 1.6 million for a whole week total. So even though they were able to score at least one Oscar nomination in the end, it really doesn't look like The Way Back is going to do well. It'll be lucky if it can make a tenth of its $30 million budget back at the box office. So way to go, guys. So moving on to this weekend from the last week box office, 2 big movies are opening. We've got The Mechanic, which is Jason Statham's latest gonna fuck shit up movie. It should do at least typical Jason Statham business, so that could be like at least 10 to 15 million. Meanwhile, you have The Right, the Anthony Hopkins, based on a true story, possession, etc., etc. That genre tends to do very, very well when you're just doing like low budget, realistic stuff. So when you're doing it based on a true story and you have someone the caliber of Anthony Hopkins, especially in a frame where a lot of movie audiences who are starved will come out for something good, Kind of mirrors Hostel, even though Hostel was R-rated a couple years ago, came out at the same time, and there hadn't been any really good horror movies in a little while. So if you have one like this, there hasn't been too much in the way of true horror, especially since The Last Exorcism. So you're looking at a movie that could cross 30 million if marketed right, and they've been marketing it pretty good. So we'll have to wait and see for sure. Meanwhile, you have 127 Hours, which has been out for a while in limited release, but now that it's being recognized by the Oscars and James Franco nabbed himself a Best Actor nomination, they're pushing it up to over 900 theaters. So if you haven't had the chance to check that out already, check your local listings. You should be able to see that. Though be aware that it is not for the weak of heart. Apparently they created some kind of new sound effect for it to accurately give you the sound of a dude having to cut through his own fucking bone. So yeah, be aware of that. You might pass out from the trauma of having to watch it. So be aware of that. Bring a vomit bag to the theater if you need it, if you're definitely going to see it, or if you wanted to see if you can make it through. And let us know how that goes for you. So before we jump into the TV and movie news, we got two brief notes, entertaining things to have been happening in the last day or so. If anyone caught TNT and Inside the NBA, TNT had to issue an apology for Tracy Morgan's appearance on the show. Co-host Kenny Smith and Charles Barkley gave Tracy Morgan a mic, and Kenny Smith was asking them to settle a debate. Sarah Palin or Tina Fey, obviously because they look alike, all that jazz. But then Charles Barkley was like, no, but seriously, Sarah Palin, she's attractive. So if you're asking Tracy Morgan to respond to a question like, well, she's attractive, right? If anyone's seen his stand-up, you should only know the levels of which that question can be answered and how far he can go. And really, TNT should be happy that he didn't go any further than he did. His simple response was, yo, let me tell you something about Sarah Palin. She's good masturbation material. So, really? He could have said a whole lot worse. That's probably the least of what I expected out of Tracy Morgan. So, if anything, shame on you, TNT, and congrats, Tracy Morgan. You actually did something to demonstrate you have a little bit of self-control. Meanwhile, in the Daily Dizzle Rehab report, apparently Demi Lovato, the chick from Camp Rock, so, one of the legit Disney whores, teenage whores that they're trying to just bring in whatever sex money audience they can get. She's on her way out of rehab. She's in a good spot, though. She's recovering. Meanwhile, we're taking her spot up in rehab. Charlie Sheen has finally checked in. I guess you can only go so many weeks of boozing and cocaining and just partying with hookers before you gotta call it quits for a little bit. So, it looks like 2.5 Men is going on hiatus for a little bit while Charlie Sheen sorts out his problems. I personally hope he doesn't, because I think he's so much more entertaining when you've got people being like, he's fucking partying every weekend! He's a famous actor in Hollywood. What the hell are you going to expect him to do? But meanwhile, on to other TV-related news. We've got the CW network. They do a very good job of trying to jump on whatever trend is currently popular because they can't sustain an audience because they're a female-aimed basic cable network. So, they jump on the Vampire Diaries. That's their show to kind of be like, oh, we're not ripping off Twilight, but we are. Meanwhile, because The Walking Dead is becoming such a famous hit at this point, having based off of a comic book and been adapted into a TV show, there's going to be an hour-long zombie drama series, Awakening, that it follows two sisters who face off against one another just as a zombie uprising begins. I like the idea of something like that, like a random normal event happening concurrently and just happens to be at the same time as a zombie apocalypse. My favorite example being Shaun of the Dead, which is exactly like a break up, win the girl movie back. Just happens to be that he's trying to win the girl back at the same time he's fighting off zombies. So I haven't even watched The Walking Dead yet. I know the first season was short, so I'm waiting until the second season is around the corner so I don't end up getting really, really fixated on it and wanting a fix that I just can't itch. So maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll suck. We'll have to see. Meanwhile, we did tell you about the Charlie's Angels remake that's coming. Apparently, they have locked in their girls. Annie Ilonza is said to be locked, while Minka Kelly and Rachel Taylor are in negotiations. Rachel Taylor is probably the one you'd know most. She's the blonde chick from Transformers. So, the first one, the Australian one. So, I guess she's an okay actress. I honestly, sadly think her best acting job was a WWE movie, because you couldn't even tell she was Australian in that. She did a very good job of sounding like a snobby American bitch. So, congrats to her. At least she'll have work for a couple months. Meanwhile, in the to kind of bridge the TV and movie news, what better thing to go to than Jackass, which itself, made the jump from a successful TV show to successful franchise. At this point, there were rumors that because of Jackass 3D's huge success, that Paramount was going to either try and have him get to another movie quick, or at least try and assemble some of the leftover footage for a Jackass 4. Originally, they had been set to do what they did with Jackass 2, where they put together a lot of the extra footage and put out Jackass 2.5 as a slightly exclusive new movie kind of thing, because it had all sorts of extra stuff that it was almost a new movie in and of itself. Apparently, that is the path that they're going with Jackass 3.5. It's set to premiere online in multiple territories on April 1st. Any fans of the Jackass franchise in the United States, Canada, UK, Australia, Germany, France, Austria, Luxembourg, Spain, Belgium, Switzerland, and Turkey will have the chance to check out new episodes every week on Juice.com. Eventually, it will culminate in a full DVD release, also available on video on demand, television, download, own. All those are going to be happening at the same time. It's following in the steps of Jackass 2.5, which in 2007 was the first digital movie released by a studio, garnered over 20 million views, and was the #1 title on iTunes the week it launched. So, obviously, I think they have it worked out that they're going to get a little bit more out of their cash cow. So, congrats, Paramount. You're whoring Jackass out more, but I won't complain about more Jackass, so I guess it's a win-win situation in the long run. Moving on to other movie news, anyone who's a fan of Valentine's Day, I never saw it, so I really can't speak, but it was a lot of big-name cast members in it, and it was successful enough that they're doing a follow-up to it, kind of. We've got New Year's Eve coming up. Not coming up. I know New Year's Eve was a month ago. I meant, like, the movie New Year's Eve. Right now, Josh Duhamel, who everyone would know from the Transformers movies as the White Army dude, or you could also know him as Tad Hamilton if you're like me. We've got him, Ice Cube, and Ryan Seacrest in negotiations to join New Year's Eve. They are the latest in a huge number of people who are involved. Duhamel will play a hopeless romantic who spends the day trying to get to New York in the hope of getting to a party in order to re-meet a mystery girl from last year. Meanwhile, Ice Cube would play a surprise, surprise, NYPD cop who is working with the director of the Times Square festivities, who is played by Hilary Swank. Seacrest will play himself in a cameo. So, it does at least seem interesting. And if those names alone aren't enough to at least make you think, well, I know a lot of people would be like, well, it sounds like it's going to be a romantic movie, just like Valentine's Day. But the cast on top of the four we already mentioned, Halle Berry, Jessica Biel, Jon Bon Jovi, Abigail Breslin, Robert De Niro, Zac Efron, Ashton Kutcher, who is probably the only person to make an appearance in this one who was originally in Valentine's Day, though he'll probably be playing a different character altogether. Seth Meyers, Lea Michele, Sarah Jessica Parker, Michelle Pfeiffer. And if all those names aren't enough, Sofia Vergara. Modern Family, the Hispanic one, the really hot one. Yeah, exactly my point. So, to round out today's movie news, though, big returning cast member coming to the next James Bond movie. Of course, you have Daniel Craig returning in the role of Bond. Good to see him getting a third shot at it. Meanwhile, Dame Judi Dench is continuing her streak that she started by playing M in GoldenEye. She's returning to the role, obviously. She can't say anything above that, though she is happy to get back to work on a Bond movie, especially with Daniel Craig, and especially with an awesome director like Sam Mendes. That's only good news to me, and if you think it's anything otherwise, go fuck yourself. So that's all the time we have on the Daily Dizzle today. We do thank you guys for joining us as always. If this was your first time checking us out, you can catch up on any of the Daily Dizzles you might have missed on our YouTube channel. You can either click the username Dizzlemits or go to youtube.com/Dizzlemits. Top of the Daily Dizzles, you can find some other original content from us, including some awesome music video highlights. As always, thank you for making time for the Daily Dizzle. And on behalf of the Daily Dizzle, I'm Tommy Dizzlemits. We will see you for the weekend update and back here for Monday.